The Mackenzie runs from Great Slave Lake through the territory before emptying into the Arctic Ocean. Like a highway, it's used to ship cargo and fuel.
Think of a massive highway that leads straight into a bank vault filled with gold. Now imagine that highway has no guards and no gates at all. That is exactly what the Mackenzie River is becoming right now. It is a natural path from the resource-rich interior straight to the Arctic Ocean. Major powers like Russia and China are already staring at this map with greedy eyes. They see a shortcut to global power. Canada has ignored this river for decades, but the new data shows time is running out. The frozen gate is finally swinging wide open. The Forgotten North Corridor. Canada holds one of the most powerful pieces of land on the entire planet. It is not a military base or a secret alliance with another country. It is a natural path that stretches for thousands of miles. This path connects the middle of North America straight to the Arctic Ocean. It drains nearly 1/5 of the whole country. It runs through land that is full of riches and ends at a coastline that big world powers are watching closely. And yet, this river almost never comes up when people talk about the future of the country. This river is about 1,100 miles long. That makes it the longest river that stays entirely inside Canadian borders. Its whole system is even bigger. If you look at the area of land that drains into it, you are talking about 700,000 square miles. That is larger than the country of Iran. It is bigger than the state of Alaska. Scientists say it creates the second largest delta in the Arctic world. Even though it is so huge, there is still no highway that follows it from start to finish. There is no big network of ports built around it. There is no national plan to use it the way other countries use their great rivers. Canada has done very little to turn this massive advantage into real power. This is the Mackenzie River. It is the most powerful river that no one is talking about. It runs from a place called Great Slave Lake all the way to the cold Arctic Ocean. But if you count the other rivers that feed into it, the system is 2,600 miles long. It is often called the second longest river system in North America, after the Mississippi and Missouri. It is a giant. It delivers a huge amount of fresh water to the cold north. Its delta covers 5,000 square miles. On paper, this is the kind of place where a whole nation should be built. But the Mackenzie does not work like other rivers. Look at the Rhine River in Europe. That river is only 1/10 the size of the Mackenzie. Yet, it is the engine that powers all of Europe. It has big cities, deep ports, and busy canals. The Mississippi system in the United States helps the whole country by connecting the middle to the warm ocean. But the Mackenzie has almost nothing built along it. The biggest town has only 3,200 people. Another town has only 1,200 people. Along the whole river, there are probably fewer than 10,000 people. That is, fewer people than you would find in a single neighborhood in a big city like Toronto. There are no major port cities and no big rail lines. For a river this big in a wealthy country, that is very strange. But here is the catch. The Hidden Wealth Corridor. The reason this story is so interesting is that Canada did not forget how to build big things. It just built them in a different direction. Most people in Canada live within 100 miles of the border with the United States. The big cities and the money are all in the south. The highways, the trains, and the ports all run from east to west. They go toward the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans. They do not go north toward the Arctic. Think about the St. Lawrence Seaway. It opened in 1959. It connects the Great Lakes to the ocean. It handles 40 million tons of cargo every single year. Canada spent billions of dollars to build that path. But they invested almost nothing to develop the natural path they already had in the north. So the real question is not why the river is quiet. The question is, why did the country choose not to build anything there? The Mackenzie is not just a river. It is a giant drain that pulls together oil, gas, minerals, forests, and power. It is a massive system that is connected to a part of the world that is becoming more important every day. Let us look at what is actually there. First, there is oil and gas. One part of the river drains northern Alberta. This area has the oil sands. These are some of the biggest oil reserves in the world. Experts say there are 166 billion barrels of oil that can be taken out of the ground. The river delta also sits on top of huge amounts of natural gas. Back in the 2000s, there was a plan to move this gas south, but it never happened. Then there is a place called Norman Wells. It has been producing oil since 1920. It sits right on the river. There are even more deposits that are stuck because there are no roads or pipes to move them. Now add in the minerals. This part of the country has huge amounts of gold, diamonds, and tungsten. It also has rare earth minerals. These are the things we need for high-tech phones, defense, and green energy. This area is already a top producer of diamonds. But the same problem always comes up. How do you move heavy rocks out of the middle of nowhere? It is too expensive. Then there are the trees and the water power. The area is covered in a giant forest. The river has massive rapids where the water drops quickly. In other places, people would have built giant dams to create electricity for millions of homes. In most countries, a river that has oil, minerals, and power becomes the backbone of the whole nation. That is what the Mississippi does. It links resources to the world. It is not that simple, though. The end of the frozen barrier. The big difference that changed everything is where the river ends. The Mackenzie ends in the Arctic Ocean. For most of history, that ocean was not a highway. It was a solid wall of ice. But that one detail is exactly why this story is changing right now. The Arctic is not staying frozen anymore. And when the Arctic becomes easy to reach, the Mackenzie stops being just a remote river. It becomes something else entirely. For a long time, the Arctic Ocean was frozen solid for most of the year. It was a barrier that no one could cross. Today, it is becoming a seasonal path and a place where big countries are starting to fight. The sea ice is disappearing. In the 1980s, the ice covered about 2,700,000 square miles in the summer. By the 2020s, that had dropped to only 1,500,000 square miles. Some scientists think the Arctic could have no ice at all in the summer by the year 2030 or 2040. That change has huge results. As the ice melts, routes that were once impossible now look very useful. There is a route along the coast of Russia that can cut the time it takes to ship things from Europe to Asia by 40%. The Northwest Passage through Canada offers the same kind of shortcut. Big countries are moving into position. Russia is spending a lot of money on Arctic ports and military bases. They have a huge fleet of icebreakers. They are treating this like a massive national project. China does not even have a coast on the Arctic, yet they call themselves a near-Arctic state. They are building their own icebreakers and spending billions of dollars on research and projects in the north. They call it the Polar Silk Road. Even the United States is starting to pay more attention to Alaska. So yes, Russia is getting stronger. China is spending money. The United States is finally waking up. And Canada is not investing nearly as much. But Canada has something that none of these other countries can easily copy. They have a natural corridor from the middle of the continent straight to the Western Arctic. The Mackenzie River offers the kind of direct access that China is trying to buy with billions of dollars. Yeah, about that. The race for the Polar Road. Access only matters if you actually build the tools to use it. Right now, Canada cannot use this path very well. This brings us to the hard part of the story. During the last century, there were many big plans to develop this river path. They were huge projects. Many of them failed or stopped for very tough reasons. First, there is the ice. The river freezes for 6 or 7 months every single year. It usually locks up in November and does not break until June. You cannot build a big shipping economy around a river that is closed for half the year. Second, there is the frozen ground called permafrost. Much of the land along the river is permanently frozen. If you build on it, the ground shifts when it gets a little warmer. Roads bend and break. Buildings crack. Pipes need very expensive engineering to stay safe. There is a highway that was finished in 2017. It is only 87 miles long, but it cost $300 million. That is more than $2 million for every mile. That is 10 times more than it costs to build a highway in the south. Third, there is the distance. The river flows through some of the most remote land on Earth. One town is still hundreds of miles away from the nearest all-season road. To get there, you have to use winter roads made of ice or fly in a plane. Another town is 600 miles away from the nearest small city. The time you can spend building things is very short. Workers are very expensive because you have to fly them in. Materials have to travel a long way. If you want to see how fast these projects can fail, look at the canal project from the Second World War. In 1942, the United States and Canada built an emergency pipe for oil. It was 560 miles long. They used 25,000 workers, and it cost about $2 billion in today's money. It was finished in 1944, and it only worked for about a year. Then they shut it down because it was cheaper to move oil on ships. They just left all the equipment there to rot in the cold. You can still see some of it today. And get this: the future of the continent. For most of history, it was just cheaper to send things south. The oil went to the United States. The minerals were flown out. The North stayed optional. Also, people were worried about the environment and the people who lived there. In the 1970s, a big study said they should wait 10 years before building any more pipes. The big gas project was finally approved in 2011. But then gas prices dropped, and the whole thing was canceled in 2017. So ice and cost and politics kept winning. But here is what changed. For most of the 20th century, the Arctic end of the river had no real value because the Arctic itself was not important. That is not true anymore. In the Arctic, being there is everything. Canada says the waters in the north belong to them. The United States and other countries say those waters should be open to everyone. You do not win that argument with just words. You win it by being there. You need to be able to watch the water and save people if they get into trouble. If a ship gets stuck, you need to be able to reach it fast. If there is an oil spill, you need equipment nearby to clean it up. If foreign ships come into your water, you need a way to stop them. This is where the Mackenzie River becomes so important. It is the main path into the Western Arctic. The small towns along the river are the only reason Canada has a presence there. But that presence is very thin. One town has only 3,000 people. Another has only 900. Compare this to Russia. They have many cities in the north with more than 100,000 people. One city has 300,000 people. They have ports and ships that move all year long. Even Alaska has big military bases and radar stations. Canada has some ships, but they do not have the roads and buildings to do much more. The truth is that Canada has a path that most countries would love to have. But without more investment, It is just a line on a map. Should Canada spend billions to turn this river into a massive military and trade highway, or keep ignoring it? Is the Arctic opening a huge chance or a terrifying threat to us? Like and subscribe for more.